Welcome to Rapid Harmony. I'm Kyle Emmanuel Brown. This is a space for high-achieving souls who want more than outcomes. You want resonance, you want truth, you want a life that moves with purpose instead of pressure. Here, we explore success with the soul and direction with depth. We slow things down just enough to hear your own wisdom again. We breathe, we question, we remember the part of you that never needed permission to leave. Every conversation is an invitation to trust yourself more than the noise around you, and live from that clarity that rises when you stop forcing and start listening. Take a breath, settle in, let's begin. So what if the very thing that made you successful is the exact thing that is keeping you stuck? What do you think about that?
The thing that made me successful is the thing that kept me stuck. It's interesting.
Or for your clients?
Yeah. There are patterns that take us to certain heights and then become, they're an asset.
Yeah.
And then they become a liability. So, in the context of me, yeah. I think what has made me successful is my ability to just jump in and trust myself and whatever emerges. Yeah. So really quick start, don't need to prepare, jump right in, see what happens, and just kind of like get on for the ride. And I think that not preparing and not thinking about all the things that could go wrong or all the challenges or what can or should or shouldn't happen, I just jump in there and just kind of open and curious. I think has led to a lot of success because I've jumped into a lot of things.
Nice.
And then I think at the stage where I'm at today, it's like being intentional, being clear, preparing. I think Stephen Pressfield has a book called Turning Pro. And he talks about the difference between amateurs and pros, and amateurs wing it and pros prepare. And that's like I've been making that turn from amateur to pro because there's a lot of I rely on a lot of natural skill and talent and ability to go in and just, you give me 2 days with no structure and I can run a training for 2 days just from an emergent field.
Yeah.
And now it's, when I'm around people who operate at a really high level, I watch how much they prepare, how much they are intentional, how much they go over and look at the little fine details. And so that to me is you hit a certain place where your talent can take you only so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we know that from the highest level of sports. And what's so interesting is at the highest level of sports and speaking and business is you take things as far as you possibly can, but the people who prepare the most, they prepare in a way that you think that they're off the cuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because that maybe, I'm curious your take on this. How would you say that highest level of preparation gets them into flow state faster?
It's a good question because the way that I've been noticing it is that my preparation is, everybody's different. Some people need a lot of preparation and a lot of scaffolding and a lot of structure. And so they need to know what they're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
They're not great off the cuff. They're not great just relaxing and listening and responding. And part of my earlier career, I was an actor for 10 years. And so I went through conservatory with this guy, William Esper, and I did a ton of improv work. So a lot of it was just listening and responding to what is and just saying yes and that process of yes and being able to just think on your feet and just react and respond effortlessly. Not everybody has that.
Right.
My wife needs to prepare. She has to write it out. She scripts it out. She studies it. She memorizes it. Then she executes it, which is amazing. For me, that's why I was a terrible actor. It's because I had to learn my lines and say the lines, and I wanted to just riff. So improv was always my thing. And so that's why when I'm preparing for a keynote or a training, I'll ingest the ideas, the metaphors, the frames, and then I just let it all go. I just kind of put it out of my mind and I let whatever wants to emerge.
I love
and having this is a new thing I've been doing, which is having a really good structured keynote PowerPoint presentation and with enough room and ambiguity to let me riff, right? So I'll have like a slide with an image or a metaphor and like 1 or 2 words, and that gives me like all the direction that can go. It gives me a
Nice.
lot of freedom.
I
So
love that. I love that. I find the more I have to have things word for word, the more I'm in my head and out of my heart.
yeah, so when I'm working with someone or a group or a team or an audience, if I'm speaking what I've already written, I've lost what's happening in the moment.
Mm.
So I'm making an assumption about where everybody's at, and I'm going to write my speech and I'm going to deliver it. But then it's not really a conversation. I'm just telling you something that I already thought. But if you and I are sitting here and there's something that's just emerging and I have no space to add it in, to me, it's not really a conversation. I'm not really listening and responding to what's happening in the moment. Again, like some people are really great at writing and thinking about what they want to say and then delivering it. It's incredible. It's just not my neurological makeup. And I think this is the key is you got to know your neurological makeup. You got to know how do you operate? Because people ask me for solutions to things and I'm like, well, I don't know what your nervous system is like.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on, you have a whole set of stories and traumas and compensatory mechanisms. You compensate and adjust for all your impediments or lack of skill and so I don't know what the makeup is and what you need.
Right.
So
I love that. And I think, again, each individual that you are working with, it's like Shaquille O'Neal giving advice to Steph Curry. Like they're so incredibly different wiring, different frames, different experiences that yes, you're playing the same game of life, but from a completely different vantage point.
yeah, in jiu-jitsu, like I'll study with a professor who's 6'4". His game is completely, I'm 6 foot, but his game's completely different than someone who's like 5'3". Their game is very different. I'm 200 pounds. If I'm rolling with a guy 130, he's not pressure passing me.
Right.
Right. So he has a very different game. So if I'm learning his game, it might not be suited for like how I'm not very flexible. So I can't invert and do all those things those guys do. They're very flexible. So there's a certain level and limitation to my body. So it's like finding someone who has similar makeup that I can learn from and apply their strategies.
I love that. And I think, if I were to distill down one word to describe you for as long as I've known you, the last few years, it'd be the word presence. You, I won't say you've mastered presence because I don't think anyone's mastered presence because we're still playing the 3D game of life. But I think you've made it a huge focal point. And it's why when you're in your energy, you can feel your presence and your presence in the moment. And do you find that if you were to describe yourself, that presence is a big value for you?
Yeah, it's huge. And I'm glad that you say like mastery is how do you put mastery and presence together?
Right.
Because it's a fluid process.
That's right.
It's like balance, like you're balanced, but you're imbalanced more than balanced because there's always this sort of readjusting. Yeah, I mean, there's different dimensions of presence. I think my acting training really trained me on how to be present and where to put my attention and my locus of attention, not on myself, which most people are still trapped in attention being inward as they're outwardly connecting. So like you and I will talk, but someone might be focusing more on what they're going to say and how they're going to respond to what's being shared. Right. And my old mentor, we trained this a lot, which was paying attention to self. So what's happening, sensation, emotion, thoughts, in internal dialogue. Other, which is like what's happening for you, like body language, emotion, like what's happening, what's behind the thing you're saying.
Right.
And then the context, which is like what context are we in? Like what are we actually talking about? And really listening for the context shifts, and understanding what context you're in. And the context is really going to inform how I listen. So like if the context is a job interview, it's very different than two people hanging out.
That's right.
If I'm listening and responding in the context of a friend and I'm trying to interview for a job, it's a very, very different context.
Well, I should have told you you are interviewing for a job today, and it's the job of tea server.
Tea server.
It's a job you already have because
Yeah,
we've had the joy of getting to sit with tea.
Oh, yeah.
And so far, for anyone listening at home right now, I'm pretty sure they think, okay, is this guy an actor? Does he serve tea?
Oh, yes. I no longer act. Yeah.
Yes.
I put that on pause at 34 when I met my wife, and I was like, I need to find my path and my mission and actually like develop agency and, financial sustenance,
Right.
which is an important piece. And as an actor, that didn't look viable. And as much as I loved acting at the time, it served its purpose, which was to free me from the emotional prison that I lived in. That was the original, I think, purpose. When I think back to it, it allowed me to be watched and relaxed at the same time, which I could not do beforehand. You'd watch me and I would get blown out of my body. I feel self-conscious. I would feel like an idiot as I was speaking because I didn't feel fluid as I was being watched. And it's so funny. The camera's here. It's great. My old acting teacher, we'd be in a scene and he would cue somebody without me knowing to bring a camera into the peripheral vision. And then you can listen to the tonal change of how they go from conversational speak to performance speak. Wow. Just to map out how people change when they're being observed. Yeah. And how their tone changes and how the whole energy shifts.
Quantum cameraman. That's the
cool.
new role.
Shout out to Paul Valley. He was the one who did that for me. He was an actor on Another World.
Oh, cool.
Good friend of mine. So.
I love that. Well, I love the idea that it does fit in with quantum science where John doesn't exist if this camera isn't on him right now and you're not watching him at this moment.
Totally. And as soon as I'm being observed, all of a sudden there's a performative component that begins to emerge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think I've let that go, which I think as an actor, if you're performing while you're acting, you're a terrible actor, right? That was like the basis. If my focus is on me as I'm talking to you in a scene, I'm acting poorly.
And I think the greatest actors convince you that they're not acting. They convince you they are the character, and they pull you in.
And in that moment, they are right.
Right.
They really are in that space. Yeah.
Right. Which probably why I wouldn't want to be married to an actress where she's in the moment in love with the co-actor. And
challenging.
It seems a little heavy. So maybe that's a little Neanderthal in me still left. So, but all good. All good. I am having the human experience.
3% Neanderthal. Yeah. So.
I love it. Well, to give a little more background to everyone listening at home, I want to give a little background of what you have done in the world, which is you have been, and I know you and I both like to step away from labels, so to speak, but I'm going to frame it as you've lived a lot of lives and sometimes I'll hear you say, oh yeah, I used to do that. And it's surprised me. So from New York yoga teacher, right?
No, never yoga teacher, but I was a massage therapist.
Yes, you had 17 years of massage. Is that right?
Yeah, 17,000 bodies. It was 1,000 bodies a year.
17,000 bodies. That's wild. And I know you've studied things like NLP, parts work, and internal family systems, and you've gotten to this place of, I guess we would call it helping people come back to some form of a mental mastery. And then applying that into their daily life as well as their businesses for these high performers, high stress. Everyone's coming to them for leadership, but they need a little bit of guidance.
Yeah, it's interesting. The high performing thing I've stopped using because most of the people that I coach wouldn't classify themselves as high performers, even though they're performing at a super high level.
Right.
They'll be running a multi-billion-dollar company and they don't feel like a high performer.
Right.
Right. So it's like that label of high performers is an interesting thing. Like, what does it actually mean? But most people who perform at a high level don't think they do.
That's right. Yeah. I would say where it fits is in the Alan Watts, we're all performers in a play concept. So I guess this is,
you're living a human experience. You're a high performer.
That's
you
true.
can survive this reality. Yeah.
So you work with these high level leaders, and where do you see discipline stopping to work? Like at a certain level where you're like, okay, they're coming to you and their whole focus is like, I'm disciplined. It's almost their avatar, their identity is around discipline. Where do you see, or what kind of things do people come to you when they feel like that isn't working?
It's a good question. I think where it breaks down. Well, so if you think about why discipline, discipline presupposes or assumes that there's a resistance, right? Because I don't need discipline if there's no resistance. I just do it, right? But But if I'm coming up against daily resistance or, part of me that does not want to get up in the morning, work out, eat well, I want to do something else. And my discipline is I'm going to override the resistance to stay in a specific lane or toward a specific goal or a certain set of behaviors or patterns. And I think that where it breaks down is when people get to a certain level in life where there's a disconnect, where there's a living, breathing part of them that's not in alignment with what they want to achieve. And so there's like internal conflict.
Do you feel like it's a form of self-abandonment to like go through the motions of be disciplined and do all these things throughout their day, but they actually aren't really connecting with self?
I mean, yeah, you look at people who do the morning rituals in a very disciplined way, and it just becomes like a checkbox. It's just like they're just going through the morning. I do my journaling, I do my cold plunge, I do my breath work, and it's like, that's all great. Let's look at why you have to do all those things.
Yeah,
like what's driving the need to do that. And look, I did that for a very, very, very long time. And the reason why is I would do all those things just to get to zero, like just to get to where everybody else was starting their day. It took me a ton just to get to like neutral, because I was already operating from like -10. And, there's a lot of reasons for that, but I always felt like there was so many things that I needed to do to get to a place where I was like on a stable ground. And now it's like, I'm not operating from a dysregulated place, or I'm not operating against a part of myself, because I'm more inclusive in terms of what's going on there. What's this that I have to fight against all the time? Like, how do I begin to create more? You talked about like, what is harmony, right? Can I be in acceptance and love and of all the aspects of myself and find some sort of alignment, which is like, hey, where do I want to go? And recognizing that a lot of the things that I'm resisting is just old protection mechanisms, parts of me that were just trying to protect me in some way, shape, or form. And
it's such the entrepreneurial, literal, let's make my open word up.
I like it, literal.
Literal, like literally, literally, trap, where I feel like what happens is it's focused effort pushed towards some end goal, and then some sort of pain point hits them, and then they want to fix it all as quick as they can. So they start integrating in these rituals. But like you said, there's still maybe sleep deprivation or self-abandonment or so much, lack of the inner alignment and lack self-worth, that they are starting off 30 points back before. So if they hustle and give an hour or two in the morning for those morning rituals just to get back to zero and then get pummeled again, it's no different than the fitness transformation of like, I went on this incredible 5-day fast, and then I went to Chuck E. Cheese and ate everything, right?
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot of layers to it. So a lot of people are carrying a lot of unprocessed trauma that kind of freezes up the system. So there's a deep calling. I want to do something in the world, but there's this thing that I have to be disciplined to move through. So discipline's amazing. I mean, there's many times where even in the men's work that I would do, like I went through a phase where, and I didn't know that I was in this phase where I would only do things based on how I felt.
Right.
And it wasn't until when I first met my wife, and she had a 4-year-old, and we would be Monday, we planning Saturday, and she's like, hey, what do you want to do on Saturday? I'm like, I don't know. Let me see how I feel. Do you want to go to this party? Oh, yeah, if I feel like it, well, maybe we'll figure it out. And she's like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I need to plan my day. I need to plan the weekend. I have a kid and all this stuff. So, and in my men's work at the time, that was a big kind of developmental process men needed to go through, which it kind of, I'm noticing guys go the opposite way,
right?
Which is like, I'm only going to do the things that I feel like doing. Right. And so there's a maturation process where it's like, I move in alignment with my commitments, my principles, my responsibilities, right? Being a father, being a husband, running a business. There are a lot of things that I don't want to do. Right. But there's a commitment to doing them and showing up and doing what needs to get done.
Right.
Which sometimes requires an overriding of the system. Sometimes there is a discipline, which is like, yes, I feel that, and I'm still going to show up and do something. And so I feel like all the morning practices are awesome. The shift that I try to help people go through is instead of it's something that you do, it's something that you, someone who you are. It's a being, it's an identity. right? So if I am devotional,
Yeah.
then I get up and I'm literally pulled out of bed. I don't have to use discipline to get out of bed. Because there's something, it's who I am.
Yep.
Like that's my tea practice. I get up every morning. I've been sitting every day for 4 years, and people are like, you sit for 90 minutes a day. I'm like, yeah, I'm just as baffled as you are, because I've been meditating since I was 17 and I'm in my 50s now. And I've never been this consistent from doing TM or Vipassana or all these different meditation practices. Tea has been the one where it's taught me what it means to have a devotional life.
Mm.
And the question is like, okay, what am I devotional to?
Right.
It's a really great question, right?
Yeah.
And there's something about the space inside the stillness. There's a Rumi poem where he talks about like inside that presence, that stillness. It's never said a word, and it's taught me everything. You know, there's something around the deepest teachings are in the place where there is no language, there is no movements, this absolute stillness.
The neglected element, right? Everyone focuses on the main four, earth, water, fire, air, but they neglect ether. And it's 90 minutes of devotion to the ether. And in that place, I use that same frame of looking at it as the difference between devotion and dedication. And I feel like devotion can be fueled by enthusiasm, versus discipline tends to be fueled by willpower, which can burn you out. And you can see two people walking down the same path, one with a big old smile on their face and the other one with like, oh, like I'm forcing myself to do this. Like it's, constipation on a toilet versus somebody could be sitting there just happy as a clam in the same moment. And I think so much of that is the word. But what's really interesting in your situation, it's almost like you used the structured discipline in harmony with the devotion to be able to get to the point of 90 minutes a day. That's incredible. It's like somebody's first time at the gym versus a bodybuilder is completely devoted to it.
Yeah, it's Eli Burrow and I. He was the one who actually introduced me to tea, and we sit pretty often together. I love to sit with him more, but we were talking about that journey from white belt to black belt in stillness, and how it's like a 7 to 10 year journey. And I do feel, someone called me like a tea master the other day, and I'm like, I'm just an apprentice. I'm a student just like you. And the old school model was we apprenticed for 7 years to learn a practice, a skill, a trade, a craft. And the tea, I feel like I'm apprenticing with the tea, but I'm also apprenticing with, how do I phrase this? It's right. Sometimes it's like the divine heart, like when, you're talking about like the ether in the devotional practice of getting to stillness, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of layers of mind, internal thinking, emotion, sensation, dissociation. It's not like, oh, stillness, silence, bliss. It's like, shit, I'm in my meat suit again and I'm stuck here for 30 minutes in pain. Right. So there's this practice of moving to a place where, I don't know if you've ever like had one of those key fobs and you lost it, but you can still start your car.
Yes.
Because it's somewhere in the car, but you don't know where it is.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like I've kind of looked at awakening as like the key fob. It's in there. And so I don't have to find it. I don't have to reach awakening. It's already in there. I need to relax into it. What are all the layers of conditioning that keep me from awakening? And this whole reframing of like, what is awakening? I used to think it was like this guru kind of celestial being thing. And it's like,
how would you define it now?
It's evolving in its definition. I think everything in my life has been evolving in definition, because every time I define something, I freeze it.
That's right.
And it's a process. Like awakening is a process. And the more I become aware or curious and go on the journey of awakening, the more I reframe what awakening is. And sometimes it's just a feeling of being in the stream of consciousness. Like I can literally feel like I can separate content and consciousness, like the form and my consciousness of the form. And there's this like real thin layer. Sometimes it's just this incredible level of acceptance or feeling held and relaxing into that. And there are these moments of awakening. there are moments of awakening. And in the tea journey, it's interesting. There are these cycles that I feel like I've gone through. I've gone through like one cycle where there are these, if you think about trauma and you think about it being, too much too fast, or some sort of overwhelm in the system, and then that system never clears and never discharges. It just kind of sinks down below the level of consciousness, and it operates somewhere in the body. And in a few cycles of tea, I would just have these memories that were still stuck in an open loop in a way.
Yeah.
It was like a neurological dead end. Like it would go to like a cul-de-sac and it would come back. It would go to a cul-de-sac, but it never like completed. Or my relationship to it still felt tense or confusing, or it would arise and then I would just either go dissociate from it or go unconscious to it or put a story around it or distract myself, right? Like all the different coping strategies that we use when there's trauma in the body. But the tea was so cool was that it would open up a space. And we do this exercise where I try to feel the size of my heart, like the dimension of my heart. Mm-hmm. And then I've worked with horses a lot recently. And then the horse has a heart 5 times the size of a human. And so their field penetrates out, and they're prey animals. So they literally will sense you and respond to the energy that you have, right? That's why the equine therapy is so powerful. And so the horses would start to teach me what it's like to feel safe, because when they're safe in my presence, they can then show me what safety looks like in their body, because they can't defend themselves, right? And so I'd go my heart, I'd go horse's heart, and then I'm like, okay. And then contemplating the question, how big is God's heart, like the divine heart? Can I find the edges? And if you travel and you let your mind wander, there is no edges. And then you wind up in this kind of infinite heart space, which is like, wow, it can hold everything. And so sometimes there's an awakening where there's the heart opens, it can hold everything. And then a moment arises when I'm 17 and I get into like a big fight and I got stabbed. It was very like sort of violent fist fight. A bunch of guys got into a fight with a bunch of guys. It was a very sort of fast, violent, traumatizing experience.
Right. Wow.
And I remember never really completing that, because it was, I was responsible, right? There was a lot of like, wow, that was really stupid. And reconciling that emotion and that feeling, because it was sort of confusing, or I didn't really know how to process it. And the tea space is so beautiful, because when you're in that really welcoming, open, divine space and something arises, like it gets held. There's nothing to do. And I don't know if you know this whole process of reconsolidation that happens in the mind when you go to sleep. It's kind of like how therapy works, right? Like you and I have a space of trust, and anything I say, you accept me. And then I share something, I have shame. And you're like, wow, me too. I did that too, And here I am kind of so afraid to share it. And I share it and you're like not judging me. And I'm not sharing it because I'm afraid you're going to judge me. So all of a sudden I share this, I revivify a memory. I reconstruct a memory in present time that happened in the past. But now it's got you and your acceptance and your kind of like humor around it. And then when you go to sleep, the memory gets reconsolidated into long-term storage, but it brings you in it. It brings the energy and the acceptance and the love and the non-shaming energy back into long-term storage. So when it goes in the unconscious, it's got less charge. That's the beautiful thing about therapy. When you have a really good relational therapist who can hold something for you, it like gets the edges and helps you to like discharge things, where it becomes like that happened. And there's like no disruption in the system. Like,
that's a beautiful place to sit. And I think the tea, sitting for 90 minutes, must take that patience fuse and lengthen it throughout the day. So when you're coming out of that state and then doing, 3D life, if you will, like you're in it. You're not living in a cave. You've got a partner, you've got kids, you've got business, you've got all these different things and different variables going on, and you're playing at a high level. Do you feel like the tea has really been able to keep you pretty even keel throughout the day, or is it more that when you do lose that harmony, you're able to get back to it a lot quicker?
Yeah, I think like in jiu-jitsu or any sort of martial arts, you get knocked off balance, you come back to center, right?
Right.
It's just that ability to come back to homeostasis,
Yeah.
emotional homeostasis. There's is it the winter solstice or the equinox where it's the longest night?
Mm-hmm.
It's the solstice or the equinox?
I think it's
The
winter solstice.
The solstice, right?
Yeah.
So it's the longest night, right? And then the next day the light begins to it gets lighter and lighter, earlier and earlier, right? And it's right around Christmas time. I think it's like December 22nd. And my whole life, I believed that we had the longest night because the Earth was the furthest point away from the sun, right? That's why it's cold. It's a dark night. We're really far from the sun. That was my operating belief.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, today the Earth's making its trip back towards the sun and it's going to get warmer and we're moving into spring and summer. This is my like operating belief system. And then I was like, is that true? And then of course I asked ChatGPT and we had a little conversation. He's like, actually, it's the closest point to the sun. It's just that the Earth is tilted 23 degrees away from the sun. And the return to the sun is the tilt coming back. Not that you're far away. And I was like, wow, my whole life, I thought it was the furthest point. And the whole time I was right next to it. And so the question is my depression, is my dysregulation, is my aggravation, irritation, frustration, annoyance, fear, all a game of angles? Is it the way that I'm orienting toward source, light, truth? Is where am I facing? And so the T really helps to reframe, kind of like my podcast, the reframe, like how I'm orienting and the angle of light through which I'm looking. What lens am I looking through? Creates the whole reality, right? It really, in that moment, if I just turn 23 degrees, I'm full light. It's just a pivot, right? And so a lot of times in the T, it's like it helps me to repivot, to realign, and recontextualize, whether it's getting into an argument with my wife or struggling with a 15-year-old teenager in terms of how to create more connection as they become more and more independent.
Yeah.
And how, wow, can I reframe that experience so that my emotional experience does not disrupt the relationship? Because the way that I'm looking at it, especially with my son, like, oh my God, you're 15. I'm like losing you in some way, shape, or form. But what if I framed it as like, wow, actually I'm facilitating his stepping into manhood, his stepping into his power, him finding his sovereignty and his agency. And everything that I'm doing is creating the space for him to do that. How do I feel emotionally? Completely different.
That's right.
And all it was a pivot in terms of the story I was telling myself around what is. And if you look at people's day, like sometimes I'll audit clients' calendars, there's no space to think. The art of contemplation has been lost as a society, because I'm even noticing people going on walk listening to a podcast. They're in their car listening to a podcast. They're working out. They're listening to a podcast. Like people are just consuming or scrolling. And I was like, why don't you stop? And then the T allows you to scroll your inner news feed. What's in here coming
bubbling up to the surface.
And I was like, wow, like that thing has been sitting in my unconscious, just gnawing at me, this generalized anxiety, which was just like a call to action of something that, hey, this is like a calling in your life and you're ignoring it. But like we have no connection to it because it's like in the background. And T allows the silence for that stuff, like you stop moving in the pond and then you can see the bottom. Mm-hmm. So you can start to see the bottom, what's at the base, what's been running underneath that you haven't been paying attention to.
So the T, I serve a ceremonial cacao, and I call it a heartadelic because it really, physiologically, your heart literally is growing from it as you are drinking it. And from the theobromines, your body's changing. If you were to take somebody who's never sat with tea, except for maybe in the British sense, what would you call it if you were to explain like why somebody could or should invest or see value from it?
Yeah, I mean the way that we pour, my wife and I pour, is there's something about the ceremonial aspect of preparing tea, serving tea, having a space of silence, especially for 75 minutes, 90 minutes, right? However long the tea ceremony is. And most of the time what people say is, wow, I never sat like that before. I have friends that come and they're like, dude, I sit for 10 minutes and I'm going to squirm. And they sit for 90 minutes and they're like, wow, what was that?
Mm.
And there's something about, in acting school, we used to have this like activities we would do where we would be doing something menial. It could be sewing or, some sort of like physical thing that required not a lot of thinking. And then we would be doing the scene while we're doing this little kind of menial task. And what it was doing was it was taking the conscious mind's attention and allowing the unconscious mind to open. And I feel like the tea allows you something, from a sensation perspective to bring you into present time, right? How do we get into the present moment? Like
Right.
smell, sound, taste, touch, right? Sight. So it's like, as you're feeling the warmth of the tea and smelling the tea and feeling the cushion and the music and the space, it pulls your awareness into the moment. And then after a little while, what happens is you start creating harmony between the conscious and the unconscious mind. Right. The doorway begins to open where the unconscious begins to open, and the language of the unconscious is metaphor. It's not words,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's sensation. So sensations begin to arise, metaphors begin to arise, and the thought comes from the bottom up, because you think when you're in tea, but it's not a heady thought. It's not a conceptual thought. You're not stuck in your mind in a
It's
story.
symbolic.
In a movie, it's almost like a three-dimensional space opens up. And so for most people, and we structure it a specific way where, we'll go through 7 bowls, and then each bowl has a very specific place you put your awareness, and they correspond with the energy centers in the body, right? The first bowl would be resting your mind in the first energy center, which is the base of the spine. And like, what's there? It's like, oof, I don't know, like my connection to the earth. Like, And then people, what is it like to be rooted? What is it like to be grounded? And I'm like, well, I always ask people, what's it like when someone's not grounded? Oh, they're all over the place. They can't sit still. They're in their head. Great. So in this first bowl, we're just relaxing into what's it like when you're grounded. And then people start to reflect and then relax into that space of ground and presence and connection. Because the thing is, like, there's something about the teachings, like connection. I heard this from my buddy Wes. Connection is the carrier wave of transformation. That when you make contact with something, transformation occurs.
Right.
So how do you make contact with yourself, with your breath, with the earth, with another human being? And people know what it's like to feel disconnected.
That's right.
But how do you create connection? And there's so many teachings through the tea that I learned how to create connection, which is actually really cool.
So
I can share it later.
That's actually a perfect setup for what I'm really curious about.
Cool.
From what both the type of work you do as well as the work and the integration of the tea is why so many of these, let's call them highly successful people within the 3D matrix feel so alone, even though they're always surrounded by people.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I'm noticing in the AI space, and I'm wondering if you see this as well. But the more people dive into AI, the people who are really getting in there, the less relational they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and the reason why is if you think about different brainwave frequencies, like if you think about beta brainwaves, or high beta is typically associated with anxiety, right? So if someone is anxious, they're in like a high beta brainwave. And the beta brainwave, its main focus is objects and things. It's outcomes. That's the thing it pays attention to. When you start getting into alpha brain waves, its main intention or focus is relation and space. So like when I'm in an alpha brainwave, I'm paying attention to the space between things. I'm not paying attention to the objects in the space. I'm paying attention to the space in between the objects, which is the relational field.
Right.
Right. And when people are really diving headfirst building a company, they're mainly in a beta brainwave. And then there's all these challenges around leadership and team and rapport and connection and how to, I teach something called portal hunting. How do you open portals, relational portals? You have to be in a relational field, right? And so if I'm just operating on outcomes, I'm going to relate to you. It's the old school networking thing. I'm going to pretend I like you because I want to take something from you, which is how people network. It's like, I'm going to go meet people because I need something from you. And to me, like that's not the way to, I mean, some people build that way. They extract, they pretend and they extract, they pretend and they
It's a
extract.
house of cards, though.
Yeah. They build a facade and a fail. But then there's always a feeling of like, I don't trust you. There's something off. Right. And, I'm sure you can spot that.
Yeah, absolutely.
A million miles away. Right.
Absolutely. At this point, it's becomes almost comical. And I feel like when you've done the work, if you will, although I don't really find it work, just you've done the devotion and you sit in this place of true self-contentment, that when someone is like that and their energy field comes across your energy field, it creates dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're catching themselves and they're watching their words and they're trying to figure out, like, how come you've become impenetrable to the sales tactics of that, which what I think is really interesting, I would love your opinion on it, is, NLP, for example, which is something that you studied so deeply. I've looked at it as similar to the Force. It can be something that is a force for good in a beautiful way. And it's also something that I've experienced both sides. I experienced it as a force for manipulation from trainers at the level where I was told by attorneys to get the FCC involved. Same tools, different intentionality.
Sure.
Within the tool framework, how have you found this integration of heart, head, gut to then use all this stuff as a force for good?
Yeah, I mean, like a scalpel, my intention, I can kill you or I can cut you to heal you.
That's right.
Everything has like a dual
right,
dual
it's
impact,
polarity.
right? There's a polarity component to anything, right? And so in the NLP space, it does get a little bit of a negative connotation because the system as a whole has been fractured. There's all these people kind of taking it. Right. But the way that I was trained was more through Milton Erickson's lineage, kind of that Stephen Gilligan is a teacher of mine, and looking at it through the lens of the way I was trained is that real transformation begins where a technique ends. But in the beginning, you have to learn technique. It's like in the beginning, when you're playing jazz, you learn the scales. But incredible jazz players don't just play scales, right? Like there's an ability to break the rules, to kind of come outside of the structure, right? Yeah. And so I was always trained that when I feel like I'm being done to from a technique perspective, it feels manipulative.
That's right.
And so good practitioners know how to work with relationally. I'm not doing anything to you. Like I was always trained, like if I want you to feel open and safe, I have to go first in my nervous system. We used to call it going first, right? So there's a lot of coaches that sit in a power seat where they're trying to create a state in the client that they themselves are not able to access or willing to drop into. So if I'm gonna facilitate someone in this really critical space, and really what we're trying to get to them is a place of acceptance,
right?
I have to go first. I have to go into that place of where am I in acceptance with the stuff that I'm critical with of myself? Can I access that? And then as we're in our kind of conversation, entrainment begins, right? There's a way in which they start to entrain to your nervous system. But I was always trained, like, what do you want? What do you really want? And then there's the question of, okay, that's what you want. And why do you want it? Because there's a lot of goal setting that people come to me with. When we trace its root, it comes from the fact that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. If I get this, then I'll have the feelings that I want. So I'm setting a goal because there's a state of being that I can't access right now, which is not true. All states are available, right? And if you had that state, would you still go after the goal? And some people are like, no, I wouldn't want to do that because I feel the way I want to feel. I don't want the goal. And then, okay, well, if you're in the state that you think you're going to get once you achieve the goal, now, well, what do you want now? And then they start to get to like the deeper calling. This is where like a lot of my work sits, is like, what's the deeper calling underneath all the stuff that you say you want?
I love that. And I think it's the way I've framed it is align, think, speak, act versus think, speak, act, and then alignment is the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to first have awareness before alignment, right? There's an awareness component of becoming aware. And the T is one of those practices that helps me to become aware, like what's there. And then there's an alignment piece, right?
Yeah.
And then there's this interesting aligning, acting component, because, you see this a lot with people who do these big psychedelic journeys. I always say, like, I see this happen where the people will do a psychedelic journey and they'll get their black belt in the psychedelic journey. I am black belt, whatever that is.
That's right.
And then they go on the street and they don't have any skills of a black belt.
That's right.
But they touched the potential of being a black belt, which to me is awakening the calling. Like, wow, I could be a black belt if I did the work to develop the skills to be a black belt. Doesn't mean that I have the skills now, just because I touched the black belt reality, right? And that's where, like, the skill development thing, you can't avoid it. There's a you're talking about mind, but to me it's like mind body. They're not separate.
I love that. And I think it's so in alignment with some of these different weekend intensives or retreats people will go on, where they'll be like, I'm unleashed a giant within me. And then you're like, yeah, but the giant doesn't know any martial arts and can't defend themselves, is walking naked through the streets. So are you gonna be picking a fight with, life when you've got no training?
Right.
And so much of it, just like with psychedelics, to me it is a glimpse into a potential of what you are, which you then, the next step is always, now let's reverse engineer it and step into the embodiment of that best and highest version of yourself, which, integration from a retreat, integration from a psychedelic experience, integration from anything that's intense, is in an hour. It's an eternity.
Yeah. A mutual friend of ours, Will Vanderveer and Keith Kurlander, just launched their book, Psychedelic Therapy, which really talks about preparation, then the experience, and then the integration, and how most of the work is in the integration. It's in weaving the insight, the awareness into new patterns of behavior, new ways of thinking, new ways of responding. And then you have to then recode the neurological chain.
I love it. And when you sit with somebody like Will, you go, oh, and he embodies it.
Yeah.
So you need to embody these things to teach them. And it goes for any form of transformation that creates the dissonance. I want to come back to what you said about the AI thing, because so I wrote an article. I've got a column with Psychology Today. I write for them about every 2 weeks. And I wrote an article called "Don't Outsource Your Intuition to AI."
Yeah.
Which is,
I have a whole conversation about that we could have.
Yeah. What would you, if you were to put it into a gift box?
Yeah. Well, here's a couple of things. So what I'm noticing is that people will outsource their future realities to an algorithm. It's still an algorithm,
right?
Everybody's saying it's sentient, it's this, it's that. It's amazing. I use it a ton, but I think that when I'm thinking about visioning and I'm outsourcing a vision, saying, hey, you should do this, and it's like all of a sudden I'm going to follow a path. It would be basically like, hey, tell me what I should do with my life. You tell me, and then I go do it.
Yeah.
Now, do you have my best interest involved? Do you really know me? Like, people say, oh, AI really knows me. You don't really know you. So AI doesn't really know you. And there's so much about you that is not understood and can't be understood. But there are patterns, obviously, that AI is able to map out, which is incredible. And it can take you so far, just like psychedelics can take you so far, but it can't take you all the way.
I love it. I've got a few points on that. One is, any algorithm really is a great example of Hermeticism and the universal law of correspondence, where your outer world's a reflection of your inner world. So the idea of like, oh, let me just give you my prompts. I'm like, no, like, where is that individual in the moment who is then, based on their perception, what are they asking? And are they asking from a place of lack? Hey, it's no different than a communication with source consciousness. Like, I'm broken, fix this. Like, no parent would want to hear that from their kid all the time. It's just like, gimme, 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 gimme. And then the other side that I think is really fascinating within this context is, I feel like a lot of people, when it comes down to this AI experience, they don't trust themselves. And it makes them trust themselves less and less and less. And they become almost dependent on it. I watched people, when the models changed, even ChatGPT 4.0 then turned into 5.0, is like it's almost, they felt like they'd broken up with their girlfriend. Because like, but 4.0 was so loving and spiritual and kind and connected, and I could do all these amazing things. And then 5.0 came in, and it's like, now it's got all these bylaws and fears and concerns. So.
I had the same experience with my OpenClaw when I first built it, and it crashed and it went away. Felt like I lost a friend. Yeah. Because it was so, I crafted this being that was sort of in line with my belief systems. So it's very powerful. I mean, all the algorithms are like really powerful. They hook you, and just even being aware of it doesn't mean it's going to change. Right. And when I got sober, they say just because you know you're crazy doesn't change the fact that you're crazy. Mm-hmm. Right. And so there is this thing where, and this is why like I keep advocating for a hybrid coaching therapy AI model, because I think it's both are great. I think individually they have their benefits and flaws, but I think together they're incredible. And there's something about the relational field and the story I'm telling myself. It's so great to have friends and people in like my men's group to be like, call them bullshit on that story, and then, my blind spots opened up and I realized I've been telling myself this story and I have been totally disconnected from what's really going on. So people are kind of in this narrative and they think the narrative is the truth, but it's just a constructed narrative. And there's so much more that you're not seeing. And there are times when AI has helped open up some awareness, or it's given me some prompts or some languaging, especially like, I'll be like in little things with my wife, we'll be into a little bit of a disagreement and I'm like, great, what are some ways to move forward? Then I have to embody the wisdom and execute it. Right. So knowledge, information is not transformation. If that was the case, all PhDs would be, billionaires, and all the people who are well-read would have incredibly harmonious lives, right?
I'll add in a step that you said earlier that I know you do, which is you will contemplate that information and extract what is good for you and then embody it. Because, Gene Keys as a great example is, something you and I have both taken to. And I know that the creator is the same guy who's, you guys both have learned to sit tea with the same master. Yeah. And I think that art of contemplation of once you've received this structure format idea from AI, that's great. And I look at it through a similar lens that I look at a lot of channeling and psychic mediumship. So in shamanism, the goal is to become a hollow bone, meaning that you're completely disassociated and the information can come through you and then get expressed out. Where I think a lot of people within that really make a mistake is they forget that even if you're ideally becoming a hollow bone, there still is a channel. There's still a human there that's filtering it through their human experience. And in this time where the world is shifting quite a bit and the veil is getting thinner and everything is rising up to the top, I think it's getting more obvious where you've watched so much polarity amongst spiritually minded people with all different vast backgrounds saying, I've channeled the truth, and they're completely different. And in the moments where you go through your process and you're sitting with tea, for example, do you feel like, stuff is coming through you in symbols and metaphors, but that you then are taking that from your own experience, interpreting that message, and then trying to figure out how to apply it to your life?
Yeah, there was this guy, Nico, that I trained acting with, and his whole model was make everything your own. Somebody else wrote the words, but when you speak them, they're not his words anymore. They're yours. They're 100% yours. And you make it, don't say so-and-so said it, say it, just own it. Yeah. Right. So there is something around, making something your own and finding a way for it to have its own unique reflection through you. Right. If, there's Mozart and then you play Mozart and there's just some musicians that are just like, wow, holy crap. Like I've heard Hallelujah from Jeff Buckley. I've heard it from Leonard Cohen, like, same song, completely different transmission, right?
I love that. Yeah. Great metaphor. And yeah, you've like a cover band that sounds just like the band can be kind of boring. It's like a copy of a key. But if somebody's taking someone's song and making their own, sometimes it's just the most magical things. And sometimes it's more enjoyable than the original.
There's a thing I've been practicing a lot, which is the sort of law of uncertainty, right? Like, and just holding things a little looser. Yeah. Like things will come up, I'll have a feeling, I'll have something strong, and I'm like, yes, maybe not. Like there is this way in which I used to dig my heels in on a sort of point of view, and or something will come up and I'll get a little rattled because I feel that way, because I don't want to feel that way. I'm just gonna, like, whatever I feel, it's almost like I create a bubble or a container that holds the thing, right? So in NLP, we talk about being associated through something. So like a trigger comes up and now I'm looking through the eyes of my anger. I'm looking through my eyes of my trigger. You triggered me, and I am the trigger, right? And the work is, can I hold the part that's triggered? So all of a sudden it's like, wow, look, my trigger. And now I'm in relationship to the part that's triggered. Now I have agency and choice. I have sovereignty, which is like, I'm not acting as if I was the trigger.
You're the observer.
I'm in the relationship with it, and I'm going to hold it. And this is another frame that I try to train everybody that I work with, is anything that arises, where it becomes a problem is when I frame it as that's bad, that's wrong, that's not good. A feeling comes up, oh, that's bad. And now I'm holding something bad, and now I'm in conflict with an experience. But everything that arises, can I hold it with just human presence and kindness, no matter what it is? Just can I love it and be in relationship to it and curious, versus framing it as this is, because most of the problems that I've had that I've worked through is I felt a feeling that I judged was bad, wrong, not good. Something about myself, whatever it was, like that was wrong.
Yeah.
And now there's shame, and I'm bad.
And vibrationally, the processes of guilt and shame are about as low as they get. And in Hawkins, shame leads to elimination.
Sure. Right.
Not an uncommon thing.
And there's this kind of bridge a lot with, you see this where a lot of guys in today's kind of space is like their anger is bad in some way, shape, or form. There's a judgment around anger. You can't be angry. And to me, anger is a higher, in Hawkins is a higher vibration than shame, right? And so I'm always thinking, okay, how can I make anger house clearing? How can I place the anger energy toward an obstacle? Yeah. Toward a pattern that no longer serves me, versus I'm going to point it at you and I'm going to hurt you with my anger.
I love that. I always have done that, coming from the fitness nutrition space and transformation. Apathy is a lower vibration than anger. And so I've always promoted that, there's this dichotomy of, in order to get what you want, you must first love yourself as you are. And at the other side of it also, you need to get pissed off with the status quo enough to want to change and transform and embody this better, higher version of yourself. Sure. So how do you, it's almost like a seesaw between the two. So it's a really interesting energy. I want to hit you with some really quick ones. Cool. Well, and just allow what comes
anger, especially for people running companies, is that the anger can come out sideways and it creates a lot of chaos and conflict.
Yes.
So I'm always looking at, like, how can the anger clear the table? There's all this shit. How do we clear it? How do we flip it and just reset? And so you use the anger toward building something, growing something, versus destroying something.
I love that.
So it's like, it's generative anger, because the anger allows you to wield the sword. Right. But if you're afraid of your anger, it's going to come out manipulative, sideways, passive aggressive. And it's like butter knives. You're hitting things with butter knives versus being a samurai.
So basically you're transmuting that anger into construction and into, or is it more, you're taking that and this is more like snake energy or fire, where it's like, let's clear all the BS and let's go.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, can our decisions be toward human flourishing, generativity, right? Health, vitality, life-giving stuff. So can we, whatever I'm doing with channeling the anger, it's in the service of like some sort of higher purpose or calling or intention.
And sometimes it's in that fire, that clearing of letting things rise to the top that aren't serving and just burning the whole dang thing down and
I've had people fire people being like, wow, okay, like this is no longer working.
Right.
And they need to kind of bring the sword out cleanly with compassion. Because if not, then everything gets taken down. So,
and sometimes in leadership, the hardest thing is to fire yourself.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation.
So I want you just to let's just imagine that you just had the tea and you've got this ultimate clarity. And from that standpoint, the quickest answers that come out, or the first answers that come out, that are the most aligned answers on these ones.
Cool.
Fair enough?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. One belief high performers need to drop immediately.
First thing that comes through is rest is lazy.
Love that.
Or unproductive.
You can tell you and I are in resonance with this next one, because this next one's a softball pitch, but I wrote it before we even started. Discipline or devotion?
Well, it's like they ebb and flow, right? Like sometimes when you're devotional from the outside world, it looks like, wow, you're really disciplined.
Yeah. What's a sign someone is out of alignment but pretending they're not?
Yeah, I mean, usually to me, it's if I ask someone, so like, as you're talking to me, what's happening right now in your chest? That clenching component. Yeah. Usually when there's alignment, I have space and I have time. Yeah. And it could be 15 minutes. I have all the time in the world in the next 15 minutes. There's an alignment piece there. There's a feeling of like spaciousness.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's open.
Yeah.
A daily non-negotiable for grounded leadership.
I would say, so grounded leadership. Well, let's first, what's it like when you're grounded, and what are the things that ground you, and then do those things. Right. There's people like, I want to be grounded. It's like, okay, what are the things that you do that when you do them, you feel grounded? Great. Let's go do them.
Let's go do them.
You can't think your way into grounding.
That's right.
You can act your way into it.
I love that. What's more dangerous, burnout or numbness?
I think burnout's more dangerous because I've noticed that once you cross the red line, to get back into green could be a 6-month cycle. It's like once you hit burnout, there's a full kind of like circuit breaker shutdown.
Yeah.
The numbness can lead to burnout.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it's like I'm thinking and doing, but I'm not really slowing down to feel. And therefore it can lead to burnout. So I think they're both. I mean, numbness to me is useful in certain contexts. That's a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. What's one thing most people misunderstand about doing the work?
There's a mentor of mine is in his 80s. Shout out to Dr. Lou Cox, who I really love. He's Bon Jovi's therapist, got him sober.
Wow.
Aerosmith. He's literally a rock star therapist, right?
Yeah.
And in his 80s, he'd reach out to me. We have these great conversations. He's like, hey, I'm looking to do some work around this piece of, some deep work. And connected him with someone to do some work. And I said to him, I just want to acknowledge you in your 80s that you're still doing the work. And he's like, it never ends. There's this thing of like, I'm going to do the work and then I'm done. And the way that he modeled it was with such grace and care and love and acceptance and no shame in the process of doing the work. It's just this unfolding through life events, as we get older, as we approach our transition, as our partners pass, as our friends pass, as our faculties begin to dissolve, all of these new challenges and issues occur. So the work is never ending because there's always new environments, landscapes, realities in our body. And the way that he modeled that was so beautiful. What are we racing toward in terms of doing the work?
I love that. So graduation from Earth School doesn't happen until you depart it. Right. You don't graduate from high school and still hang out, unless you're Matthew McConaughey and Dazed and Confused. So I want to flip the script. And what's one question you've been sitting with lately or something you want to ask me?
Question I've been sitting with. There's been a few. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the one that I constantly contemplate and ask people is, what does enough mean to you? Like, yeah, what is enough?
Mm.
And just like, and what if you had enough right now? Like, what would that be like for you? What would you be doing? How would you be living? And just getting a sense of like what does enough, because most people are coming from a place of, I don't have enough,
Mm-hmm.
as like a default. But then when I ask them what does enough mean, it's really difficult to define.
Yeah, that's a great question. The ultimate earth trap, because it could be in any category.
In what context?
Right. But it could be in every context,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You'll see somebody who's, multi-billionaire, and they're like, and I've got 30 women, and they're all together in this room, and, it's without depth.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're having to show up, and it's like, well, I need to just accumulate. So at the end, I think enough is gratitude in the present moment. That's what enough is. I think it's just taking the breath, creating a little space between you and the actor in the play, and sitting and remembering the cosmic joke. I think that's when we know we've got enough, is like, this is really funny fucking entertainment for our higher self, where it's not so serious. And I think when you get lighthearted, right, meaning everything becomes less dense, less physical, and more in the light, you get into more resonance and out of your head and into your heart. Just like the energy rises up. To me, when the energy rises up, there's usually a smile. And it moves me into that higher vibration of bliss state. And I can have that feeling of enough right now. And I become more childlike, which is why I really have dissonance with the idea of being born broken. Like, I think that's when you're the least broken, because you're the least programmed, and you're the closest to the divine.
Yeah.
And
when you have children, they're not broken.
When your kids came out, did you go, you little sinning motherfucker? Like, no. I looked at him. I looked at him and was just like, wow, this is the most amazing thing ever. And then the second thing that I did, besides going, this is the most amazing thing ever, is like, I checked everywhere in the glove box, but there was no fucking manual.
Yeah.
And then remembering that we are that little baby still, and that we don't have a manual.
Sure.
So that's the improvisation, is, why do people need all that discipline and structure? Is it to create a sense of false security, when in reality we always have security? Which means we always have enough if we always have security. So I think that's how we get out of the enough. And even sometimes the enough is noises like that come from your phone when your phone is in airplane mode, because
it's like do
right. Apple creates the cosmic joke.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So now I want to bring it into, what does harmony mean to you?
Well, this is where I think in the T space of really contemplating not just conceptually what it means, but like from a experience, like how do you know you're in harmony, in terms of like, what do you experience? What do you notice inside the body? Because to me, harmony is more of a physiological state than a conceptual frame, right? It's like, it's a physiological state of, I've touched harmony in terms of feeling the space, even just having spaciousness around me, just feeling in relationship with my environment. There's harmony, whether that's harmony with my wife, maybe that's harmony with my body. Harmony is an interesting thing, because I feel like most of my growth has not come from harmony, right? Like, most of the things that I have experience that has catapulted me into new realities has been the opposite of harmony. There was disharmony, there was dissonance, there was conflict, there was tension or chaos or frustration or irritation. And as a result of that, my seeking was to create more harmony. In order for me to do that, things needed to change. So I think there's almost like there's harmony, and it's like, okay, I need to create a little disharmony, because there's a little bit of like, what does Dr. T call it? Like a hormetic stress.
Yes.
Right. Where it's the stress that actually creates growth and health, whether it's
hormesis.
Cold plunging, hormesis, right?
Yeah.
Cold plunging, saunas, fasting. That's not harmonious, right? When you're fasting, but it creates an environment where there's more harmony in the body. Right?
That's right. It's the external stressors are still going to be ever present while we're here. So can you within the body be, there's that resilience within that harmony. And also when you're in that sense of harmony, are you feeling magnetic? So like within your relationships, I'm curious if you've noticed this, like I've sat with T, I wake up, I go upstairs, I see my wife. Are you then in those moments, do you feel like when you've sat with things, you've processed things, you've done the work, you've created the hormesis, that you then become a little bit more magnetic and can create a better masculine container for the home?
Sure, because there's all these sort of shields, barriers, tension, static that gets, I mean, we walk on carpet, you touch a door handle, you get shocked. People, if you go through your day, you're going to build up a charge, whether it's with your wife or your partner or whatever it is, the environment around. So there's that, to me, there's like, what am I doing to discharge? What am I doing to put the armor down? Where am I protecting myself, hurt, wounded, have a story that I need to take a deep breath into and realize, oh, wait, that's not me. And that's just an old pattern keeping me separate. So yeah, there's a lot of times where I'll put that down and there's more spaciousness and connection and love and softness with my wife or with my son, whatever it is that I'm doing, entering my day. But then, we're not monks. We live full lives.
That's right.
And so, there are many breakdowns and challenges throughout the day. And I just think to myself, wow, like this has been like one of the most challenging years and the most incredible years. I mean, that's when people are like, how are you? I'm like, dynamic. Which plot line at what time frame?
Right.
Because some are 10, some are 2s, and they happen simultaneously. It's like we live in such a dynamic world, especially when you have family and kids and business and health issues, right? As we get older.
That's right.
So I feel like life is dynamic. There are many things happening. And even when they're challenging, having a space where you can step outside of circumstance. Because one of the things that comes up a lot is in NLP, we have this idea around being in time or through time, right? So if you unroll a film reel, right? And you have like, here's frame 1 and here's the end of the film, right? You kind of see it. And I'm looking at my timeline, birth till death. And I'm actually looking, there's, hopefully 190-ish when I'm dead, right? There's me birth. And I'm watching sort of the timeline. There are many circumstances, 17, got sober at 25, I got married at 34, I got a son at 37, bought my first house at 40. Like, wow, look at all these circumstances that hold all these emotional realities. Overwhelming, challenging. Oh my God, am I going to make it through? I don't feel that way anymore. They were circumstantial, right?
That's right.
And so one of the skills, when I think about what are the essential skills, is can I step off my timeline where everything that's occurring right now I've unplugged from, and I'm not in this moment. Like I can feel the beginning and the end, and now I have access to all of it. So my whole nervous system goes, oof, I'm offline from circumstance. Maybe non-dual, right? It's, people kind of talk about the non-dual state.
Right.
I was always trained that the non-dual state is a resource that you relax into and you free yourself from like a constricted identity. And then when you come back into your life, you get to choose where you land.
I love that. It's a
shout out to John Overdurf.
It's if you can't change your circumstances, change your perspective, hence the reframe. But then also once you do step back, you can step back in
with a new choice, new identity,
as a new character,
new frame, new belief system of like, oh, this is just temporary. This too shall pass. And instead of focusing on all the effort that I need to do to get where I want to get, how will I be on the other side of having it? Oof, what's possible? Oof, right now I start going out into the future of possibility, and then I can maybe use that energy or chi to do the thing that I need to do, right? This is where like being able to step off of time, out of time, into resource in the future, right? And I have like a little exercise that I do. It's like I call it quantum collapsing. Do we have time to? I can share it with you.
Yeah, we'll use that as a wrap up.
Cool. Yeah. So if you think about the distance between intention and then having that intention, so intention creation, right? I call it like the intention creation cycle. I call this threading, right? So most people have a belief that they can't materialize the thing that they want, right? It's like, I can't create the thing that I want. So I always say, okay, what's something you have right now that you didn't have before? And so, the way that I do this, like, let's say I was pouring tea for a men's group in Mexico that I'm in. And as I was drinking the first bowl of tea, I went back to the first moment that I had the idea or the intention to pour tea for these guys on the retreat.
Yeah.
And then I reached out to the guys that run the group. Hey, I would love to pour tea for this group. They're like, that'd be amazing. Let's set it up. It was on the balcony in Costa Rica. It was beautiful. It was incredible. And what I did was, as I was drinking the bowl, I went back to the first moment I had the intention of doing it. And then I just like allowed them to kind of blend into each other. So the intention and creation were happening in the same moment. And then my unconscious mind goes, oh, you are, as an identity, someone who manifests intention. That's who you are. So so it's like, now I have evidence. Like, when I set my mind to something, I make it happen. Look what I'm doing. I'm doing the thing that I set an intention to do. And then you can go back and do that for everything you've created and start to train your unconscious mind going, ooh, I have an intention to do this. Ooh, I wonder how I can close the timeline between that intention and actually having it in physical 3D reality. It's like an interesting manifesting.
It fits in the be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you step into the embodiment of that change and collapse the timeline.
Yeah, because it's happening right now.
Right.
You just literally, hey, I had a vision of hosting a retreat and you're about to start it. And then you go, oh, that first moment 3 years ago, I had this idea. And then I pull that moment in and going, oh, here's my idea. And I'm running the retreat.
And that's why I say the word presence in the beginning of this episode is a great way to describe you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
Thank you for spending the time today.
Yeah,
this was amazing. And you're in good conversation when you don't want it to end. You could go and turn this into a Joe Rogan 5-hour talk. I love it. I love it. So for those listening at home, if they want to continue to follow your journey, learn from you, etc., what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I have the Reframe podcast, which has been slow. It's but it's out. And now it's about evolving it. So I'm in that process of evolving it.
You're reframing it.
I'm reframing my relationship to content creation. And then, johno'connor.com. I don't do a lot of marketing. I'm trying to put more social media out there just because it feels like at this stage, like I can transmit more to a wider audience just for transmission's sake. I'm not like setting up funnels and building my business that way. It's not how I build my business.
You're more into the fun than the funnel, I think.
Yeah. The fun and the funnel. I like it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, brother. This was so much fun.
Yeah. Appreciate you.
All right, my friend. If this episode sparked something in you, don't just wander off into the abyss of the internet. Hit subscribe so you can actually get the good stuff when it drops. And if you're feeling generous or mildly enlightened, leave some love in a review. It takes just 30 seconds, and somehow it feeds the algorithm gods so they know to send more people who really need it. Now, if you want to step deeper into my world, rapidharmony.com is where the real magic lives. Coaching, community, rituals, and a few surprises that are way better than just scrolling around another motivational reel and not doing anything about it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being you. And remember, your inner harmony isn't hiding. It's just waiting for you to pay attention. I'll see you on the next episode. Now go subscribe before you forget.